I believe, or IndyAct believes, that the major blame now is on the developed countries. But we believe that the oil-producing countries that have sold the oil has also a big responsibility, and they should also be paying for solving climate change. I mean, in any other environmental issue, let's say toxic in a product, the first thing we go to is the producer. We blame the factory that's producing it, not the consumer. The consumer is usually the victim. Why, in the climate change issue, we are not going to the producer, which is the oil-producing countries who have made billions and billions of dollars out of the oil? Another question we have to answer is, what is the scenario, the energy scenario and commitment for developing countries? Okay, we know that developing countries, especially the people, the ones that don't produce oil, are not responsible for the problem. But if all developed countries stop emitting CO2 by 2050, totally stop emitting CO2, we will not reach the 50% by 2050 goal that we all want. We will need a reduction from developing countries. And this is important for us because some of the Arab countries are not developed, they're developing countries and they don't have oil, and we need to know what's the demand for them. What should they commit to? It doesn't mean that they will have to pay for it, but at least there should be a cap, that this is the maximum CO2, and you should plan long-term how you're going to stay within that cap and start thinking sustainably about your development now. So I hope you show up to my workshop at 1.
Okay, well, I'm going to offer you a challenge as well. Can you think of another country if you think of oil, Middle Eastern wars? Any guesses? Any clues? Anything at all? I'll give you a hint. It's west from here. You love his president. He's your real hero. Yeah? Well, not all Americans are bad, as I think you all know. I'm going to introduce you to a very nice one, a friend of ours. Please welcome, as if I know his name off the top of my head, of course. Please welcome Tom Stokes from the Climate Crisis Coalition USA. Tom.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here from the country that represents entitlement and arrogance. The largest emitter of greenhouse gas. We're about to be overtaken by China, but certainly we have a long ways to go when it comes to per capita emissions. I'm from the Climate Crisis Coalition. We were started 3 years ago with the idea that yes, this is a crisis. We better get real about it. This is more than an environmental issue. It's a social justice issue. It's an economic justice issue. It's an environmental issue. It's equity across the board. It is a crisis. We need to act soon, and we need to be strong about it. We've come a long ways in about 3 years. Not just us, of course, but in the U.S., we believe there is a sea change happening. Part of it has to do with Al Gore. Part of it has to do with the new Congress. The new Congress is immensely different from the previous Congress we have. There are a number of environmental bills that are being debated today. The leadership of both the House and the Congress are challenging the President's administration on a daily basis. However, just about all these bills are based on cap and trade, which we have some obvious questions about. And also the big goal is 80% by the year 2050. And I think all of us here today think that, well, this is great, this is terrific, but 2050, we don't have till 2050. So we've got to act soon, we've got to act now. Frankly, I debated whether or not to be coming here today, and as Jonathan and Phil well know, I delayed till the last minute. I was wondering, you know, is this hypocritical, jumping on a jet plane to fly across to this meeting? But I did decide to go after talking with Ted Glick and other people that I work with on a daily basis, because we feel so strongly the need to join the rest of the world. And with a sense of urgency, with a sense of equity around social and economic justice, and as well as climate justice. And we also feel that this December 8th demonstration needs to be big. We've just come off in the US the Step It Up action, which how many of you are familiar with the Step It Up action in the US? Well, this was really significant, we feel. We worked closely with the organizers. We handled several ourselves. Across the country, there were 1,400 actions. If any of you have not been to the stepitup07.org website, I urge you to take a visit because it's very uplifting. You see pictures of people across the country holding up signs, 80% reduction by 2050. We feel a momentum starting, and we feel that it's particularly important to continue this momentum in street activism on December 8th, because A, we need to unite with the rest of the world, and B, the post-Kyoto deliberation is obviously extremely important. And most of the environmental groups in the US are concentrating on the legislation, and most of the environmental groups in the US are concentrating on legislation that's based on cap and trade, rather than firm limits and perhaps carbon taxes. So we have a great distance to go. Another reason, frankly, I was a little reluctant to come here today is because, as some of you know, we put out the Climate Crisis Coalition news feed on a daily basis, where we summarize important stories each day, and the weekend it's a slightly longer edition with 40 stories about. Do any of you here get our CCC news feed on the internet? I see a couple hands. I would love to see more hands, and what I would particularly love to see is input from various countries and organizations of what we're doing, because we really like to publicize what constructive, positive things that people are doing. There's a lot of doom and gloom in our news feed, and obviously this is, people need to know about it, but we also need to know what individuals are doing in different countries and in different segments of our society. So I know we're nearing the end of the time limit here. We're delighted to be here. We want to reach out. We want to work cooperatively. We're aware that the US has a terrible attitude, that the issues of equity are extraordinarily important. The growing dichotomy between the rich and the poor in our country and internationally is completely unacceptable. We've got to think in new terms of a global community based on equity, and we're here to join you, to reach out to all of you, to work with you, and to try to make December 8th a very significant day. Thank you so much.
As Tom said, we are actually now rather pressed for time, so without any more ado, invite Marco Rossi from Ecoistituto Terremutanti, Milano, Italy, to speak.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. At least let's talk about Italian job. I'm very pleased to speak after Spain and after Tom's speech, because I think both our countries experimented the BNB connection, Bush and Berlusconi, for many years, and thanks God, Italy signed Kyoto